3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I fallen.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
making review. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the 10th episode of Rank and Review, and we're doing something different this time. This week's episode is called Homicide Made Hilarious. My dear friend Ntara Curry and I are going to discuss 6 comedies that have sort of horror premises. So it's kind of a change of pace, and I hope you guys like it. As usual, I'm going to warn everyone in advance that there could possibly be some coarse language and some spoilers. So let's just roll with the punches, shall we? My name's Larry Parsons. I'm your host in Random Canadian, and thank you so much for listening. Okay, so this is going to be episode 10 of Rank and Review, and I have my dear friend Ntara Curry in my filthy garage with me. We have a rich and storied history, Ntara and I, and I'm super stoked that you agreed to do this podcast with me. Last week I promised that I would do something lighter for this episode, so we're doing something different. We're doing Homicide Made Hilarious. To accommodate Ntara, who is not a horror movie fan. Welcome to Rank and Review, Ntara, and why not the horror? Why not with the horror?
'Cause I guess I learned about the horrors of real life on, like, a political stance, just knew how bad the world gets, not that I was abused and shit as a child.
That's right.
I knew that bad stuff happens in this world, and really bad stuff happens in this world, so I guess watching the movies is reliving a feeling that I don't really think I need to relive, and mostly I don't enjoy it or find it particularly useful. That said, in the last 5 years we watched a movie together that kind of proved for me what the use of horror movies are.
Right.
Up until that point I kind of mostly just
Didn't understand it other than it scared you.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, I got a lot of it, because a lot of them are really smart, and a lot of them are really fun and funny, and I got that you guys liked them, so, and you know, I liked a lot of things.
Some of
them.
Yes. Well, it's interesting, because I do enjoy a horror movie that is about something, like that they're digging into a meaty sort of story, but I've also come to the point where I can just enjoy a dumb, jump out of the dark, boo, don't overthink it horror movie. I think it's sort of my version of what a lot of people have in romantic comedies, where they're getting something, they know what they're getting when they step into it. You know, when you get a romantic comedy, right, that there's going to be some embarrassing foibles that happen, some romantic misunderstandings, but in the end it's all going to work out okay. And in a horror movie, you know that people are going to make dumb decisions, and they're going to put themselves in jeopardy, and probably only one of them is going to survive. It's like a happy meal. It's just like knowing what you're getting.
So there's something comforting in the old
Almost.
Formula, and knowing that you're going to go down the same pattern.
It's the same way my wife can watch like lazy bad television, like just consume it all the time, but like it's just comfort food almost.
Let's not be comparative about it, because each of those different topics are very different things that I could discuss at length.
Right.
But the horror movie genre, my particular problem with the horror movie genre, as opposed to bad television or romantic comedies, both of which I do enjoy at times, is that fear issue, that absolute abject terror thing. Like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't know why I need to feel that when there's so much terrible things going on. Like, what if the bomb explodes? Do I need to relive that? Like, do I need to have extra bad images in my head? I can think up all sorts of terrible shit. I don't need to...
You don't need more things to get
be
scared
scared that a zombie's gonna grab my hand when I opened a door. It's like, what? Where did that image come from? Fuck off.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
there's something to the safe
naming
scare.
the terror. Yes, the safe scare. And I think this is where I got it. Like the really smart movie that I don't want to mention the name of for some reason.
All right, it'll be
It's a
our
mystery.
secret.
Because it was sort of controversial when we saw the experience of it. And anyway, that in that context, it was safe enough for me to go through some really scary places, and for me to have some really clear, scary things that we're afraid of. Right? Like I don't know if this was in the movie or not, but like, what if the crazy psycho Christian bitch woman actually is right? Like those intellectual fears that get you right in the gut. That's what works for me. And in that movie, there's enough question at the end that I could go, oh my God, they opened a door. I was scared enough in that experience and safe enough in my world for whatever reason that I could see a possibility that I'd never seen before in the ending, and that's where it's really useful for me.
Yeah. We have some theater in our background, you more than I, and you do a lot of dance and movement stuff.
But writing gives a certain perspective on watching stuff.
Where is it going? The emotional reaction that I get, and then that's what I know that a movie's working for me if I react emotionally to it.
Right.
And I think that's why I tend towards comedies and towards horror movies. Because I know if a comedy's working that I'm laughing loud and my stomach hurts.
Yeah.
And I know that if I'm watching a horror movie that my body gets tense.
Sure. And that's why a romance works. When it works is because you actually feel that glow feeling or whatever, right?
But I think that the negative feeling that a lot of people, and maybe you associate with horror movies, I get in some of these like super heavy dramas.
Right. Yeah. I sometimes hate them. Yeah. Absolutely.
Where it's just like, they're looking at a valid issue. They're looking at like some real issue that's important, that is worth examining. I find that like really hard to watch. And even if I really like a movie, like a Requiem for a Dream or We Need to Talk About Kevin, or like some of these really challenging, ugly movies, they can go over the top bad, but when they're done well, they really they almost leave scars on me. But I can't go to those again and again safely. Whereas I can go to these sort of silly, safe scares.
But why would you need to relive that scare? Like, I understand the argument that it's important for us to keep the scare feeling alive, even if the real issues of the day are way too important, and we want to blow our brains out if we look at them.
Well,
like, that makes some sense to me.
That's entertainment in its whole, right?
I would say that's sociology in its whole.
But I mean, in dealing with the evil, we take entertainment to deal with it and learn about it. Like, that's what entertainment does, right?
I feel like that's an entirely different like intellectual argument in itself, which would be freaking awesome because that idea blows my brain, and that would be fucking cool. But horror movies, the fear factor, like, I just don't get why that's like, it bores me.
Right.
I find it tedious to relive that fear thing.
Well, that's cool. And fair enough.
And movies like Requiem for a Dream, like, watch them once. That's it. That's all. They're astounding, and I'm not going to tell other people to watch them. I'm not going to tell other people to read Barefoot again at the age of 6.
Right.
It's not it's not necessary, but I don't think. Like, I understand the feeling of something, and you've said this, but I've also found it so curious. Like, watching horror movies to feel something, but why feel fear? Like, why would that be a feeling?
I think it's something that a lot of people really like. I think it's the same thing that, I mean, everybody gets it differently, but some people really like going on a roller coaster,
Sure,
it's a
like speed, drive fast, speed turns me on. I get it.
Yeah. You're safe. Even though your body's telling you you're being thrown around and spun upside down and terrible things should be happening to you, you're in a safe space, so you can enjoy what would otherwise be scary. But again, it's everybody's different strokes for different folks. I appreciate you doing this, and I think we should introduce the movies that we're going to talk about, and then talk about some of them. The interesting thing, we're doing Homicide Made Hilarious, and I do think that if you were to, you could like write a descriptor for each of these movies, and it would sound like a horror movie. like if you did like a one-line, a TV guide version of it, you know.
Oh yeah, like that Mary Poppins is a horror movie. Did you see that trailer?
Yeah, where they do false trailers. But I'm
yeah.
talking about that. Like, say, like the Cable Guy, for instance, is one of the movies. Like the one-line treatment of the Cable Guy would be a mentally ill cable worker obsesses over one of his customers. That sounds like a horror movie, right? But that's the movie. A man begins to suspect that his fiancée is a serial killer, so I married an axe-murderer. A creative writing teacher, through a misunderstanding, is hired to kill one of his students' mothers and throw him over from the train. A clique of girls take bullying to a whole different level, and high school gets a body count with Heathers. Drop Dead Gorgeous, a beauty pageant competition that is so competitive that there is a literal body count. And The Lady Killers, about a group of people who try to pull a heist in the basement of an old woman's house and have to kill her to cover up their crime.
Yeah, right now I'm not interested in any of those movies. I did not enjoy any of those movies. By that description, those were terrible movies. Like, why the hell would I like those movies?
Well, it's just
why did I like those movies?
Because they're funny, and they're not particularly scary at all. But I do think a lot of them are hella dark.
Absolutely. And that's one of the beautiful things about comedy, is that it can be used to look at really terrible things. And that's why I like comedy, is because I can be scared out of my mind. And then it's going to be okay, because they've given me something more than that fear.
I think this is actually a pretty decent collection of movies overall. I liked it. I enjoyed revisiting a lot of these. And I think I do prefer, quote-unquote, dark comedies over sort of like the mainstream wacky comedies a lot of the time. It appeals to my sense of humor. But more than any other episode of Rank and Review, you're going to find this episode is one you can take home to mom and dad. Are you ready to get started?
Totally. They were good movies for me because they were because they totally most of them pushed my edge about what a horror movie is and like why I do or do not like horror movies. So it was awesome. Thanks.
Sweet.
You've got to get it through your thick head. I may be a lot of things, but I am not a killer.
You don't have to blow her brains out or anything.
Thank you. That takes the pressure right off.
She's old. She's got a bad ticker. All you gotta do is jerk around a lot when you talk to her. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Lift. Stop it.
Evan, what the hell's going on out there?
We woke her up. Nothing, Mama.
Who's this?
We're going to talk about Throw Momma from the Train. There's a lot of interesting things about this movie. It's written and directed by Danny DeVito.
Woo!
Also co-starring Danny DeVito.
I didn't realize he directed it or
Yeah.
wrote it. Well, that goes all of my notes.
Pardon me. It was written by Stu Silver, and it was directed by Danny DeVito, but he did also act in it. This is interesting on many levels. It's one of the rare occasions where there's a movie where the central character name is Larry, and he's not an incompetent moron or a scumbag or, sleazy in some respects.
Well, that's sort of arguable.
Well, he's not the smartest guy in the world, but he is our protagonist. We're rooting for him. We like Larry.
Yes.
It's so rare. So
Yes.
this gets a pass right away from me. It's the basic premise, and they steal it from a Hitchcock movie, is that this creative writing teacher played by Billy Crystal, named Larry, has a meeting with one of his students, Owen, played by Danny DeVito, and they have a little miscommunication. He's giving him advice and telling him to watch some Hitchcock movies and get inspired, and what Danny DeVito's character is receiving is that, I'm making you a deal. I will kill your ex-wife, and you will kill my mother. And the laughter ensues. Ntara, what did you think of Throw Momma from the Train?
It was the movie I liked the least of all of them, although I think I was supposed to like it much more than I did. Now, granted, I watched it separately from the rest, so it may have been an experiential thing. I adored Danny DeVito in it. I adored him as Owen. I adored most of the really awkward twists. Like, there were some awkward suspension of disbelief moments, and I went with them. Like, I liked it well enough. I found the ending disappointing. Like, by the time they were on the train, I was sort of tired. And was like, what? What's Mama doing on the train? What?
I guess I would say that perhaps the title of the movie is maybe not the best title. They might have been able to come up with a better one, because first of all, it takes some of the suspense out of the earlier scenes when Billy Crystal is or is not attempting to kill Momma, played by Anne Ramsey, who was nominated for an Academy Award for her performance.
Great. She was the mom in Goonies.
That's correct. And Pee-wee's Big Adventure, she shows up in that movie. She makes an impression, and you understand why Owen feels this way about his mother.
Oh, poor sweet Owen.
But
you want to kill her yourself. That's good.
And it's weird that we like Owen so much, in that, like, he's willing to perform this murder for Billy Crystal's character, and he wants his mom dead, and he just can't kill his mom. But
it's
he
great.
fantasizes it about, and it shows us we see lots of these fantasies of him, what he wants to do to his mom, which are darkly hilarious. I'm actually a really big fan of Momma from the Train. I thought it's a fairly short movie. It packs a lot of story into a short time frame. There's some 80s-ness to it, but considering it's like 1987 or 88, I believe, there's a lot worse movies.
87.
Yeah. It's not distractingly, like, hilariously 80s.
It's not short.
Yeah. An hour and 28 minutes, that's less than an hour and a half. That's pretty short for a movie.
I guess so. Sorry, digression.
It's all good. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Danny DeVito as a rule. He likes his comedies dark as well. One of his most underappreciated movies, I think, is a little title called Death to Smoochie, which I actually think is darkly hilarious.
I would watch it again, for sure.
And he did this one with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner called War of the Roses, which is super heavy and dark and also really well done.
I like that.
This is sort of his first big broad comedy, and I thought he came out of the gate pretty impressively. I also like Billy Crystal a lot in this movie, and it's kind of cool to see him so young and full of energy. Like, yeah. You remember?
True.
Oh yeah, Billy Crystal was hilarious.
I think I don't. I find Billy Crystal's a tricky one for me. I don't think I really liked him until something like Princess Bride.
Right.
It is really great to see him young and be like, oh right, he was he was a leading man dude. But he's and I like his kind of crusty leading man for sure.
Yeah.
It's far nicer than the super purely lovable handsome man. But I still don't love him. Like, he's a little bit I want him to be a little bit more Matthew Broderick and Cable Guy. I want him to love Owen just a little bit more.
Yeah, he's trying to get himself out of this situation for the most part. He believes that Owen has killed his ex-wife.
Which is, yeah.
So, worst case, like, he's trying to either avoid jail or trying to warn. Basically, his tactics change from scene to scene because he's a desperate man.
It's just the Billy Crystal take being so, like the Woody Allen-y thing he does. I don't know.
I think one of the reasons that I really like this movie too, other than the character's name is Larry, I like the creative writing angle. I mean, I am a writer and I do this stuff like that. But the night was scene, which is one of the earliest scenes in the movie, where he's just sitting in front of the typewriter and the night was. The night, I love it. I just think it's hilarious. I think all of the students in the class and all of their different short stories are hilarious. That woman who's running this submarine thriller but has done no research.
Women I'd like to fuck.
The guy's got the coffee table book of women he'd like to sleep with. But he's ever expanding. Whenever he meets a new woman, you can just see him taking mental notes. It's... Yeah, like... And
the good is so good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Where some of the stuff gets weaker, we have sort of the old trope of... in one scene, Danny DeVito's character is hiding in a room, and two people end up having sex on a couch, like, really close to him. and he's hiding awkwardly while this whole scene is playing out. I didn't think that scene was as funny as everyone involved seemed to think it was, and it did go on, I think, a little while longer than it needed to. But for the most part, yeah, like I said, lean, quick, funny, dark comedy. It's my cup of tea.
The useful thing about the sex on the couch scene is that you get to see all of the books of the ex-wife and know that she probably is somebody who is worthy of being killed, much like Momma. So there was that.
And Billy Crystal's hatred for his ex-wife, you kind of understand it. It's not just that he hates the fact that she used to be his wife. She stole his work, claimed it as her own, and became an international star because of it. She's a millionaire and, floating on a cloud of his work, and he's this, creative writing instructor.
Well, that's one of the things I liked about her, was that there was the question of whether or not she was that, like whether or not Billy Crystal was just, whether Larry was just going off on some big tangent. Like, was he just being hyperbolic about it? Did she really steal his work? What we don't know. And then as the movie goes on, we gradually see, oh yeah, she really is that terrible. Yeah. And he really is the good guy. And when push comes to shove, he's not going to throw Momma from the train.
No, he can't do it. We know that Larry's not going to kill Momma. But, yeah, again, there is that turning point in the script when Anne Ramsey gives him the feed line, the line he's been looking for this whole time. The night was sultry. And he says he's going to kill the bitch. And for a second you believe him. I don't know. Like, the movie works enough. It's a big thumbs up for me.
It's true. The balance is pretty solid.
Woman! Whoa, man! Whoa, man!
Charlie McKenzie.
Hello!
Finds something wrong.
She's a thief. She was in the mafia. She smelled like soup.
With every girl he dates. But when Charlie meets Harriet...
Hi.
Hi. What do you look for in a woman you date?
But I'd really have to go with breast size.
He knows she's the one.
You have the face of a wee angel.
I give! I'm Charlie's father!
Except for one thing. She might be a serial killer.
She murders her husbands on their honeymoons, then changes her identity and marries again. I'm afraid that you're gonna...
So we're going to talk about So I Married an Axe Murderer. Woo. It is directed by Thomas Schlamm and written by Robbie Fox, but it was retrofitted to accommodate its star, Mike Myers. It gives Mike Myers a chance to do all the sort of Mike Myers stuff that he was good at, especially in the late 90s, and hang it on this script. Basically, Mike Myers plays Charlie, a guy who has a lot of trust issues with women. He can't seem to find the right girl, although he's never seemed to have a problem finding a girl. Finally finds himself in a position where he's in love. But, of course, a series of events lead him to believe that she may be a serial killer who murders her husbands like a black widow. It's got a lot of famous faces in it. Nancy Travis plays the love interest. It's a fairly easygoing down, charming comedy. What did you think of So I Married an Axe Murderer?
I loved it. I always love it. I think I'm bored of it and I never want to see it again, and it's in my pile of like, whatever, that wasn't so good. And then I watched it again and I still loved it. Like, yeah. And I get bored of movies so fast that says a lot.
It is a Mike Myers feature that I can revisit easily. I can't really say that about the Austin Powers films, and the Wayne's World movies just haven't aged that well, I don't think. This feels very 90s, but this reminds me that there was a time where Mike Myers was a very capable, funny, comedic actor, and there's been a lot of evidence to the contrary subsequent to this.
Well, it's kind of timeless, because what it is it's a fine script. Mm-hmm. Like the retrofit thing, I didn't know that, and it makes perfect sense, because it's a lovely script that anyone could have played. Mm-hmm. But they cast Mike Myers, and it works really well for him.
All of a sudden, the Scottish father becomes a big part of the story, right?
It's a context for his shenanigans, and it's a good one.
And this was sort of the first time we saw the big Scottish thing, which he would revisit in Shrek and in, Austin Powers and in everything, I'm sure. he's charming in it. You believe him as kind of a ladies' man too, which I hadn't really thought of him in that.
I would
respect.
date him. Like he's the same old doofy you saw in Wayne's World, but you date him.
But he doesn't have the mullet and the goofy
But
grin.
he's got the weird mushroom cut, which you can I can say it's a kind of timeless movie, but he's still a doofus with a mushroom cut.
But even if you're not a Mike Myers fan, I would say, watch this movie, if not for Mike Myers, but for the parade of great faces that you're going to see doing bit roles throughout the movie. It's
amazing.
ridiculous.
The cameos are fantastic. You keep being surprised.
Well, where do you start? I love Alan Arkin as the police chief. Anthony LaPaglia is sort of his best friend and the undercover police officer who's really bad at being an undercover police officer. He wants his life to be like a TV movie. He seems to have become...
Not now, Chief!
Yeah. He seems to have become a police officer for all the wrong reasons.
Or all the right reasons, and you love him all the more. And in the end, he does it, which is the best, right?
It's true. Amanda Plummer, who shows up in the movie as Nancy Travis's sister. She's one of those actresses who's always at 11. You have to be careful how you cast her, but when you cast her right, she's perfect.
Oh,
and in this case, she is cast
This is
correctly.
the perfectest Amanda Plummer. She's so good.
Phil Hartman.
Yeah, right?
Phil Hartman showed up, which is just, he's so funny in the movie, and it's just heartbreaking to see him every time. It's just like a twist of the knife. I love Phil Hartman.
He's so good. Love him.
Yeah, there's tons more that we're missing. But
I'm going over my notes, and some of it makes sense, and some of it doesn't make sense. My first one, though, is a quote. How many people does it take to make a cappuccino? Which
oh yes, the opening is one long panning shot of a cappuccino being made.
Yep, and I think that might be Mike Myers' first line. And at that point, I was like, "Yeah, that's right. This is a witty film."
Yeah, the whole art pretentious beat poetry that he does.
And right now, I have in my head a picture of that park in San. Where are they?
I think San Francisco.
Yeah, and there's that park, that iconic park that they visit a few times in this film, which is so lovely. Like, just those shots that show up out of nowhere. And the beat poetry.
Yeah, the weird beat poetry. It's like you don't even know if he's taking it seriously.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You want to do that.
They're like funny, weird things, but is this something that Charlie really does and takes seriously?
Well, and what does he do for money? This is my big question. Like, is that what he does?
He's a charming dude.
No, is he a beat poet for money?
Because how much money could you possibly be making? He clearly works once a night, or once a week.
In that world.
Right?
We never see his apartment, do
we? Ah, weird. There's too much that we don't know about Charlie. We're made to be suspicious of Nancy Travis's character, and now you're bringing up all this stuff.
And what's her
Charlie.
name? Because I wanted to call her Charlie, but that's only
Nancy
because that's
Travis
what Amanda Plummer said.
Character.
Charlie. That's
Her
right.
name
I
is
just said her name.
Harriet.
Harriet.
Her name is Harriet.
Sweet talking. Harriet.
Yes.
Untrusting.
There.
Harriet's place was amazing.
Yeah, Harriet has a really huge apartment.
Sweet pad. I loved her as the butcher.
Oh, yes.
That was sexy.
She was sexy.
And that great first scene. Like, what a great first meeting for people of just like, hey, dude, I'll help you out. Okay. Yes. And then they're like slinging meat and he's being silly and it all works. And
the romantic comedy angle, this is a romantic comedy, it completely works. I keep on trying to put this in the frame of a horror movie, but it is not a horror movie at all.
But there is that tense business and you're just like...
Yeah. But I played for laugh. Again, when he becomes suspicious of her, every little thing he overreacts terribly to. Right?
Yeah, it does feel more like a sitcom up until a certain point, and then it does twist, and it really is frightening. Like when are we giving
spoilers away? Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Because all of the Amanda Plummer stuff on the roof is. Yeah. Really quite disturbing. Well, except for the whole like sliding down on the crotch.
Yeah,
on the pipe
he gets hurt in his
but,
penis, and
which is hilarious.
The axe falls perfectly between his fingers.
That's so phew.
Yeah.
But there's a chunk in there where it's genuinely
No,
scary.
that's Amanda Plummer, man. She's just off the leash, just completely bonkers, and. Like, that was not a surprise to me, that reveal. That it was
true. That's a little bit
no part of me believed that Harriet was the killer.
No, but But her scenes build it well. Like, that's where the scary comes in, is because you don't see Amanda Plummer for a while, and they're in the they're in Scottish hotel, and Harriet's wearing like slinky red dragon lady dress, and you're pretty sure she's just nervous because Charlie's been acting so weird.
And all of her husbands have left her, and she doesn't want it to happen again.
Yeah, exactly. And Charlie's finding the rings, so maybe she is the killer, and maybe she is crazy, and you've sort of forgotten about Amanda Plummer for a minute.
Yeah.
And it does get genuinely scary, and Amanda Plummer shows up, and then you're freaked out about her, and then it gets silly again. So I would say it kind of fails as a horror and as a really good film. Like, if they could have sustained that fear longer, or Amanda Plummer was a little less crazy.
I don't know. For me, I think it worked as a comedy.
I mean, it's a great comedy.
I didn't feel any genuine peril again for Mike Myers. No part of me believed that he was going to die and that Amanda Plummer was going to win.
No, but did you doubt for a minute? Did you think for a moment that Harriet might actually be
the killer?
Yeah.
No, I really didn't.
But the evidence.
Yeah, I was like, though, this is a romantic comedy. I know how this ends. I know how this ends. This ends with, them getting married and driving off to happily ever after, right?
How did you know that? Did you know for sure it was a romantic comedy? Well, yeah.
It's sort of like with the same programming I was talking about the horror movie. Like, if I go into a standard slasher movie or something like that, I know that either no one's going to survive or one or two people are going to survive. You're going to start with a large group and it's going to get whittled down. Same thing with the romantic comedy. There's all sorts of reasons why it can't work out, but it works out, right? Same deal here. And it's done completely well. It's a very charming movie. There's... like you say, it has a high rewatchability to it.
Cable guy!
Let's do this.
Slip the cable guy $50. He'll give you all the movie channels for free.
You're offering me a bribe. What you have just done is illegal. And in this state, if convicted, you could be fined up to $5,000 or spend 6 months in a correctional facility.
Oh, please. No, that was dumb. I was just making conversation.
So speaking of Jim Carrey, The Cable Guy, this was the movie that ended a long line of mega hits for Jim Carrey. He was, Ace Ventura brought him up, and then he did like The Mask and another Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber and a Batman movie, and it was like he was becoming this $20 million boy. And then he joined up with Ben Stiller, who was directing a feature film after his TV show came to an end. You'll see cameos from like Janine Garofalo and Andy Dick, who were in the Ben Stiller show.
The cameos are awesome.
You'll see lots of celebrity cameos in this movie. He got a huge paycheck for this movie. It was a big, summer blockbuster event movie. And America said no thanks to a large extent. I mean, I'm sure it didn't lose money in the end, but it was not the monster hit that they were expecting, and it didn't necessarily justify the paycheck that he got. That said, I think Jim Carrey is actually quite brilliant in this movie in a lot of ways. He plays a deranged guy who's raised by the television who thinks he's a cable guy. I guess the one narrative hiccup in the movie is why did he show up to hook up the cable? What happened to the actual cable guy? Is he in a corpse in the trunk of a car somewhere? Matthew Broderick, as he will always be known to me, Ferris Bueller, plays the put-upon sort of victim. He offers Jim Carrey $50 for free cable, and it costs him $50 and his job and his girlfriend and being able to look his parents in the eye and a lot of physical injury and personal humiliation. This is a dark sort of stalker comedy. And in the age that this was made in the 90s, every weekend there was one of these legitimate thrillers opening about the crazy so-and-so, single white female, crazy roommate, crazy secretary, Fatal Attraction. These movies were all over the place. So here comes the Jim Carrey comedy. What did you think of The Cable Guy?
I'm surprised to find out that it was late in his career, because it read to me like it was early Jim Carrey. I liked it. I was surprised how much I liked it. I don't think I'd seen it before. I wasn't expecting much, because regardless of where I thought it came in his career, I knew it wasn't a super Carrey hit.
Right.
The premise, the ick, and so much of Jim Carrey, like Jim Carrey in that premise, ick, right? Like, like that's the gross Jim Carrey, right? Not the one who I'm like, yeah, I'd start fuck him. But he's great. Like, it's the same kind of character as Owen in Throw Mama from the Train, where it's the anti-hero, the poor, sweet, damaged thing who is so fucked up and does these fucked up things that you're just like, what the fuck? Like you're so, like you don't know what to do with it. And in the end, it's like perfectly, like you understand, even if you never can justify the behavior.
He definitely does some legitimately evil stuff and does become the villain.
Oh,
but
my goodness.
You feel bad for him because you realize, we get his origin. We understand why he is the way he is. And in a way that few genuine thrillers bother to do, frankly.
Yeah, and it's one of the, like, the movie doesn't fail because of Carrey. Like, Carrey gets to go to all of his fucking crazy places, and it works. It's great. Like, that, you want more of that in the, like, him, if he was the legitimate crazy fucked up man, that would be terrible.
I still think he's very funny, but I think part of the reason that it wasn't a hit is that he wasn't likable in the movie. Like, his character was the villain of the
and
in all the
you
previous...
have to do... I thought he was likable, but I have to like, I recognize that that it's not an easily accessible, likable character. Like Matthew Broderick is that character, would have maybe sold more tickets.
Yeah.
Matthew Broderick as charming Matthew Broderick read as putting up with Jim Carrey.
Oh yeah, there's scenes where you can see him trying not to laugh.
They should have cast it the other way. I mean, as much as I love Jim Carrey in that, it might have sold.
Jim Carrey, he did everything he could to earn that paycheck in this movie. He is out there. He is.
I love him more. I would have Jim Carrey baby.
He is aggressive. He is in your face. You read him as dangerous right away, and so does Matthew Broderick.
And Matthew Broderick, bless his soul, keeps like do. Okay, like it's the nicest nice guy Matthew Broderick ever plays is in his. He's so bored.
Well, and then when all this terrible stuff starts happening to him, it's just, that's for me, why I think it won't, as much as I like Cable Guy, it's not going to rank as high on the list for me as some of the other ones, is that I'm not a big fan of cringe humor, and a lot of this movie is, oh, stop, oh no, it's still going on, like the dirty game that he ends up playing with his parents, where he has to, mime some phrase in order to get his mom to say nipple and things like this.
Oh, that was a terrible scene. That was almost the end of it.
It's exquisitely done, but it's not something that agrees with me necessarily.
And that's like, I don't know, Jim Carrey loves his work so much or something in that moment that I could buy into him being brilliant.
Yeah.
Like not just being a clumsy asshole, like usually that character is in that moment, but like so clever at being so mean to somebody who he perceived as being unnecessarily cruel to him.
Well, and some of the scenes are just so harsh as to actually hurt the funny a little bit. Like when he has the scene where he has to break up with Chip and tell Chip that he doesn't want to be his friend. It's brutal.
It's so good. And then at the end, when he's in the dish and he sacrifices himself, and you learn that he was a cable kid, and it's like the fact that it's able to attempt to make that huge statement.
Yeah. I fully believe. The climax of this movie, Jim Carrey falls and he breaks the satellite dish, which is bringing in everybody's television. I fully believe in the original working of the script that the cable guy died when he fell from that tower.
Totally.
That was very much, I believe, a studio retrofit or something that he was alive and went on to stalk another person. The movie seemed to be leading...
Stalk is hard.
But, But the movie was leading to this. The ending was him falling onto this satellite dish and ending cable, however briefly, to try and
then,
save the other little cable boys and girls.
And then it was a beautiful sacrifice of this damaged, terrible man. And instead, what happens? He peels himself up.
He picks up and then goes on to, stalk somebody else. Or
to give cable. I don't know, maybe he's had some life change.
Well, I didn't get that vibe. The movie didn't. It seemed like sequel ready, almost, the way they were setting that up.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, because he hits they come and rescue him, and they're going to fly him out by helicopter, and the guy EMT guy is like, "You're going to be okay, buddy. You're going to be okay." And Jim Carrey looks up and says, "You mean you're my buddy?" And then there's this close-up of crazy eyes, like, it begins again.
That's right.
He has learned nothing. But
oh my goodness.
A lot of good celebrities show up in this movie, too.
Owen Wilson!
Owen Wilson gets the shit kicked out of him by Jim Carrey in a very hilarious sequence in a bathroom. Jack Black, before Jack Black was sort of anybody of note as the supporting character, as a buddy of Matthew Broderick, shows up.
That's pretty sweet.
Janine Garofalo drops a few dry deadpan lines as a waitress who hates her life at medieval times. The movie is solid and fun. I think that, like I say, the darkness maybe detracts from the humor at some point. It almost feels weirdly ahead of its time in its sort of satire of the saturation of the media. It's interesting. Jim Carrey has a speech the first time they go to the satellite dish where he talks about the way things are going to be when we're going to integrate our television, our phones, and our personal computers, and you'll be able to play video games with your friend in Vietnam. All of those things came to pass subsequent to this movie being made. It was absolutely dead on correct in what it was predicting. The movie doesn't look quite super dated yet, but it will very soon. It will get increasingly dog-eared. It's worth checking out. It does not deserve the negative reputation it has.
No.
Ben Stiller has directed some fine comedies. And
his cameos are well cast.
Yeah.
They're very clever. It's part of the joy of it is all of the cameos and how Ben Stiller works.
Yeah, it just works.
In it.
Yeah, it seemed like he was sort of
a lovely surprise. I had no idea he directed it.
Yeah. It was interesting because I think this was shortly after his TV show wrapped up. So, like I say, you can see a lot of people from his TV show showing up in small supporting roles, and he still seemed to be in that world.
Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes, and there's some really, really great quotes that I've pulled.
Bring it.
Like the scramby eggs, the morning after the karaoke party, and the prostitute. Oh my goodness, would Ernie, Jim Carrey's character, brings in this prostitute is just like completely natural, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I checked her out myself."
Yeah. That conversation when Matthew Broderick realizes that Chip has bought him
a girl,
a prostitute.
but Chip is completely like so natural about it, just like and then the next morning making scrambled eggs, and they're going to do stuff, and you believe it for a second as a viewer because like those kind of buddies, that's what you have to do. Like, it's weird. It's weird.
And in Cable Guy's world, speaking to the darkness of the film, he probably would pay for sex because who would sleep with the cable guy?
Well, but it's a perfully logical solution.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if she's good, you share her with your friend.
Yeah. Oh no, she's quality. Let's move on.
3 blind mice, 3 blind mice.
Heather Chandler, Heather McNamara, Heather Duke, Veronica Sawyer.
Why are you such a mega brat? Because I can be.
The most powerful clique at Westerberg.
God, Veronica, drool much?
Most people would die to get into it.
Heather number 1 just looked right at me.
I'm worshipped Westerberg, and I'm only a junior.
Veronica would kill to get out of it.
You were nothing before you met me. You were a Girl Scout cookie.
JD has come to answer her prayers.
I'm a no-rest build-up man myself.
We'll kill her.
He's got a way with women.
So here's a movie that I will argue with you. Well, I don't know if I'll argue with you, Ntara, but I would argue that this movie could not get made today. I don't think that Heathers would get greenlit. I think it's too dark. I think it's too violent. And I think what it says and what it enjoys and what it sort of bathes itself in, sort of the darkness of being a teenager, could not, coalesce in this day of school shootings and violence in the media and blah, 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 blah. I think that the reason that Heathers is going to be kind of an immortal movie is because I cannot think of another high school movie as dark as this. Maybe Election, but this is one of the darkest teenage comedies ever made, and I think it's quite brilliant. What do you think of Heathers?
Well, I think we can probably get into discussions about dark teenage movies, because I've just sort of started thinking about some of the really dark romance teen movies, because those go to some pretty dark places. However, point stands, Heathers is a dark movie that will not be able to be remade for another couple 100 years.
Oh,
maybe.
Please don't remake this movie. Just let it be what it is.
Well, we have to remake everything. That's sort of the way to do it. Regardless of timelessness, I think it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Like, it stands... I think it stands now as a solid movie in spite of... Yeah, it can't be because of... But there's some really clear, 90s not quite sure of our medium, how exactly do teenagers act, sort of awkwardness that happens in the movie, which is charming, and keeps it from being a perfect movie, and is still a really, really, really good movie.
Oh, yeah. It's about something. It's really, a lot of the kids, I think, and this is a weakness of a lot of 80s movies, specifically teen movies, are too old. They're just clearly not high school students. That's part of the 80s prestige. I think we just have to accept that. But basically, I'll just hit the plot a little bit here. Our main character is Veronica, played by Winona Ryder. She's very young in her career. And she has recently sort of climbed the ranks in high school and joined the Heathers, the most popular clique in school. These three beautiful but mean women who sort of lord over the high school. And she also meets a very young and totally channeling Jack Nicholson Christian Slater, and comes to a few conclusions. She comes to the conclusion that she doesn't like any of her friends, and that, she might have made some compromises that she shouldn't have. And JT, the Christian Slater character, awakens some interesting and dark things in her, and soon a series of terrible events happen. The level of darkness of the movie, even at the time, they did make some changes to soften it, but we see a beautiful, 16-year-old cheerleader drink some drain cleaner and drop face first through a glass table. And I don't know that it's a moment that's actually played for laughs, although she does utter corn nuts just before she expires, strangely. But it's a turning point in the movie, and the movie spirals out of control, ever mounting afterwards. I think the performances are very strong. I think even Shannon Doherty, who herself has admitted that she's not good necessarily for comedy, I think she acquits herself well enough. I believe her as a shallow bitch in this movie. She must have done a lot of research getting into the role. I also like that they invented lingo for this movie. Instead of trying to emulate what the kids were saying at the time, like, what's your damage, Heather? And all of these little... We kind of get to know the kids.
Know what a Jefferson's going to play a reindeer game.
Exactly. They have their own sort of dialect, which I think is just really good. And instead of emulating what the kids were doing, they were giving the kids something to emulate.
Yeah.
But what it was saying about teenagers and how terrible they can be, it was very heavy, and the violence that is dealt out is pretty unequivocal. There are moments where we see the little sister of one of the victims crying at the funeral, and we have a moment of, holy shit, this should not be funny. But here's the thing. it's funny. The movie made me laugh out. It still makes me laugh out loud. But should it? It's so dark. Sorry, I feel like I'm taking over the review, Ntara. Please.
Well, you were sort of giving the synopsis and then the review, right?
Yeah.
And then your basic review. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a highly problematic movie. I could pick it apart to no end, and it's such a really good movie. Like my greatest enduring issue with it is the fact that people I know will still use the lingo from it in a pseudo-serious way, emulating the Heathers, right? And perpetuate that issue. Like, it is really fun. The Heathers are fun, but I do think it's just one of those things that's like, you're playing a bitch, being a bitch to me. I don't really think that's funny. You know, like, why are we emulating them rather than emulating some of the funny stuff that Winona and Christian Slater say to each other? But yeah, I don't know, maybe it's better that we're emulating the Heathers and fucking gently with the chainsaw.
Heathers, and I think that's why it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There's truth.
Which is why it's so creepy when it shows up in real life.
Yeah, there are little cliques like this that show up in high schools, and I do believe if the prettiest, most popular chick got knocked down, the second most popular chick would take her place.
It's great.
Absolutely true. Like,
it's great, and that's why it works. It's like Mean Girls before Mean Girls.
Yeah. Basically, like, J.D. convinces Winona Ryder that the first murder was a misunderstanding, but clearly Christian Slater set her up to drink the drain cleaner. And after that, Winona Ryder starts to kind of meet him halfway. He gives her stories about what they're doing, but they're pretty weak. The two football jocks who get shot and then posed as if they were out in the woods having one last encounter with each other. Weird. Like, there's no reason she should have believed that story. When she pulled the trigger, she had to know she was holding a real gun. Part of Veronica is complicit.
Oh yeah, and that's part of why it's so lovely and can only happen in a high school. It's like I don't know, it's like Romeo and Juliet. It can only happen because they're that age. Heathers only happens even though it's something that we can all relate to, right? Like, it's interesting because of the power of popularity. We went through that, we can relate to it, and it's sort of natural human pecking order stuff. And the getting carried away by a boy stuff, like, I don't know how often I've gotten distracted by a guy in my life when there's no reason to. Now, granted, I haven't been killing people, but I could have been doing... I have done not nice things in the name of somebody else's justification, right? Like,
been talked into things that you would otherwise not have been talked into.
Yeah, and it's set up really well. Both the context that it's in the 80s is that weird, absurd context that people keep trying to do, but only worked for a few moments of convergence of pop and rock and roll or something. Like, the bizarre moment of Heather saying corn nuts when she falls through the table is bizarre and absurd, and there's no formula for it, but that one worked and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I'd say mostly it does. And then the other things that are, like, seem too crazy that they shouldn't work but do, suicide becomes the popular thing. Because all the popular kids start, quote-unquote, committing suicide, suicides start going up. It's like people are so desperate to be popular that if they have to kill themselves to do it...
It's also one of the real-world disturbing things. Like, it's what makes it clearly a horror movie for me and not a dark comedy, because that's what kids do. Like, it's a proven thing that suicide does have that kind of effect to it. So, because it's slightly absurd in Heathers, and they, from the beginning they set it up, because the Heathers are sort of... They're so polished and specific
that
there's
croquet.
There's a general absurdity that is then enhanced by that rock and roll 80s sensibility that lets things like the cult, not the cult, the fad of suicide become something that we can look at really deeply, because it can still be funny, right? Like, and so it's that much more disturbing. And then the doing what popular kids do, and how do you end that cycle? by going batshit crazy, clearly.
The staff at the school, the principal discussing whether or not they should have a full day off of school or a half day. He'd be willing to go a full day for a cheerleader, but, you know, maybe just a half day for Heather Chandler, right? Or the guidance counselor, bad grade, like crazy woman who's like,
so much
deciding
terrible.
whether or not to kill yourself is one of the most important decisions a teenager can make.
Which is some of the most... I love that satire in it. Like, she took... there's this edge that they're pushing, and then they pull in this, like, beautiful love and love everything, hold hands, and we're gonna all commune teacher, and she's actually, like, almost... She's, like, adding fuel to the suicide cult. It's so awesome and disturbing and...
I'm going to move towards the end of the film here because I want to tell you how the film was originally going to end. Have you heard this?
You told me this.
In the movie, Winona Ryder, who, by the way, I think gives a really good performance in this film. She has an energy in this movie that you don't see in Winona Ryder almost ever. It's a very young performance, but she carries the movie and does so well.
This is one of the performances that I love Winona Ryder forever for. Like, she can do some shit, and she does, but this is so good, you know? And Christian Slater, too. This is not when they were dating.
I don't know exactly.
I think they dated on the other one, but this one was maybe when they met.
I'll ask them next time I'm talking to them. I'm not sure. Anyway, so I was talking about the climax of the film.
Speaking of the leads.
Yes.
Wah, wah, wah.
Christian Slater is setting a bunch of bombs beneath the gymnasium that are set to go off during their meeting, during the, what do they call them when all the kids in there?
I forget. It's a pep rally, except it's like a special, like...
All kids have to go there to rally school spirit.
But it's like a hold hands and think about your option of suicide type pep rally.
Well, anyway, the idea is that JT is going to explode the school. And he had this false petition, so he got all the kids in school to sign it, basically making this a big poetic mass suicide and a statement to the world that is in such horrible decay. And you can argue he's not wrong about the world being in horrible decay, but his methods are undeniably evil and wrong. And Winona Ryder finally realizes that, you know, fallout or no, she's got to stop him. And they have a conversation in the boiler room. She shoots off his middle finger, removes the bombs from the school. As she's leaving, he approaches her from behind and decides to kill himself. That's how this movie basically ends. JT commits suicide, and Veronica decides to move on and try to not be an evil person anymore. In the script, the entire school, including JT and including Veronica, is exploded. And the last scene we get is them all in heaven. All of them at this like school dance. And they're all drinking this dark blue liquid out of the punch bowl that looks a lot like the drain cleaner. But everybody is smiling and everybody's getting along. And popularity doesn't seem to be an issue. They're just in heaven. They couldn't quite go that far when they made this movie. But I think it gives you an idea of the level of darkness that this movie was like going for. And the fact that it is still funny and that it is, I think, you know, in a way, kind of an immortal movie, I think is interesting. And no, I don't believe that movie would get made today. There's a scene where Veronica's mother walks in a room and sees her hanging by a noose. And it's a horrifying scene, but it's almost played for laughs. Because she just starts mumbling, I should have let you take that job, and I didn't mean to be so strict. That scene's not going to get made today. No.
Oh yeah, it would be an entirely different movie because the social commentary would be different. The relationship between mother, it would require some massive rewriting.
We like to think,
but there's something that's very much a reaction to that '80s cool clinicalness and having money and girls having a certain amount of freedom and play. Like there's a decided '80s social commentary in there if you want to pick it out.
Well, there's evil in the world, and that means there's evil everywhere, and that means including in high school.
Oh my goodness, the relationship between JD and his dad. That was the big evil that I saw in it this time around. Like, I think before I've just been like, okay, kids and crazy shit and people getting blowed up, and yeah, Winona Ryder being tough girl without being sissy girl, and yeah. But
well, I mean,
Dad.
Yeah, the father-son relationship seems to have been reversed. JD's mother has died in what was clearly a suicide, because as the story he tells it, she knew that that building was supposed to be bombed, and they were there to demolish the building. And she walked into the building and waved out the window just as it was going on.
She was pretty much sick of being towed from town to town while her husband kept on being an asshole and buying people out and blowing up buildings, and so she just
relishing the destruction of it.
He just sounded terrible, but it's hilarious. It is hilarious until you realize how terrible it is. The way that JD calls his dad's son.
Yeah, they reversed the roles.
Like it's this great, lovely game for a while, and you're like, gee, I wish I had that relationship, and it's so playful, and then it's like, oh my goodness, his dad is terrible, and JD is so full of pain and hatred, and then you find out that he really is bad, because he's so charming for so long. As a girl, I could buy in. And Winona Ryder is a strong enough, interesting enough girl character. One of the problems, I would say, is that I know so early on that she's clearly very different, that she's not, like, there's very little struggle for her to not be part of the Heathers and all.
She just has to choose not to be part of Heathers, really. That's really all she has to do. She'll just go back to being what she was, which would seem to be what she wanted, but for some reason she needs JD to teach her this lesson.
Yeah,
and I do think it's a bit of a bummer how complicit she is in the murders. I almost wish with those two jocks that JD had done all of the dirty work, because it does make her a murderer, you know?
Yeah, or if the actress playing was someone slightly more vapid, maybe it would have been easier to see her just being somebody with less choice, but Ryder is...
It's bold that they make her kill him. Like, it's bold. And again, like, the movie consistently makes brave choices. And that's what I love about it.
Oh, yeah, and that ending, she is so wonderfully badass. Like, I want girls... I want all those young actresses today who are playing badass girls to see this film, because she's honestly badass. And she's dirty, and she's sexy, and she lights a cigarette off of the smoldering remains of her boyfriend.
And it should be ridiculous. She looks like Wile E. Coyote at the end of a Roadrunner cartoon at the end of this movie. And as much as a compromise as that ending maybe was to the original script, it works well enough for the movie. And you know...
For Veronica to be the heroine at the end, like... Maybe she'll end up being just another Heather like anyone else, except seeing... I don't remember the name of the girl in the wheelchair.
Right.
The big fun girl.
Right.
To see her doing the wheelies around Veronica walking down the hall, it's one of those hope moments. Yeah. It's like the end of the zombie movie when there is hope, not the zombie movie.
And that's what they wanted to give you at the end of the movie, is just a glint of hope, because the movie is pitch black.
And I would say that this ending works better. I usually am a fan of the original endings.
Right.
But not having seen it, I would say that this ending is the good one.
Horror movie fan or comedy movie fan, please, by all means, if you have not seen Heathers, it is completely worth your time.
So interesting.
Every year, in the small town of Mount Rose, Minnesota, a special competition takes place.
I know what some of your big city no-bra wearing, hairy-legged women libbers might say. They might say that a pageant is old-fashioned and demeaning to the girls. No, I think you boys are going to find something a little bit different here in Mount Rose.
Ouch!
But for two ambitious girls,
I believe this pageant teaches you what's really important in life.
I dream of getting out of Mount Rose. I mean, guys get out of Mount Rose all the time for hockey scholarships or prison.
And two jealous mothers.
My daughter is the most talented contestant that Mount Rose has ever had.
It's not just about beauty.
Go Muskies! Woo!
I'd lay down 10-1 that it all comes down to Amber Atkins and Becky Lehman.
It's about poise.
If you could be any tree in the woods, what kind of tree
Okay, here's a film directed by Michael Patrick Jan and written by Lona Williams, and it's called Drop Dead Gorgeous. It concerns a beauty pageant that has a bit of a body count. The Sarah Rose Miss Teen Princess America pageant, to be more specific. I guess our central characters would be played by Kirsten Dunst and Denise Richards. I was quite mean on Denise Richards, actually, when I was talking to my friend Jared about Starship Troopers, which is a movie she's in. But I really, very rarely have I been wowed by her as an actress. I think that in this case, she's really well cast. I think that the part that she's playing, she's well suited to. She's very beautiful, and she's good at, making a big false smile when is needed.
She's the brunette, right?
Yeah. Kirsten Dunst is sort of the poor, raised in a trailer, just beautiful because she is, and Denise Richards' character is more, her mommy was the former beauty pageant. She's very wealthy, and she has been made to be a princess her entire life. And she's, comes off as quite ruthless.
Yeah, you'd feel sorry for her if she wasn't such a bitch.
Yeah, and she was spoiled every day of her life, and that's why she's such a bitch.
Yeah, she's clearly spoiled, whereas Kristen Dunst, you can't help but love her.
Yeah, she's just all full of love.
We love her.
Yeah. And the two other big performances that I think are worthy of note are the respective teenagers' mothers. Kirsten Dunst's mother is played by Ellen Barkin. She's sort of a trailer trash, chain smoking, but like a real person. She wasn't necessarily a cartoon either. It would have been really easy to just go all Cletus on it.
Oh, she's great.
She and her friend, played by Allison Janney, who I'm a big fan of, look like they're having a ball, actually trashing it up.
Totally.
And Kirstie Alley plays Denise Richards' mother, and I think this is the best thing that I've seen Kirstie Alley do. That I've seen. I didn't see her TV show, but the best movie that I've seen her do. Post Cheers. Post Scientology,
Scientology?
Yeah, she's big in Scientology. But hey, whatever. It's a lot of connections.
This is better. This is better than Scientology. I approve. Just for the record.
So yeah, it's got that Minnesota Nice thing going for it. There's echoes of sort of the Fargo, oh you betcha kind of qualities.
Which is a lovely place to place a murder.
Yeah, and
much like a beauty pageant is a beautiful place to die.
If we were treating this as a horror movie, I could almost argue this is a found footage. It's actually a pseudo documentary. There's a camera crew sort of covering the pageant. So that, I think, raises the stakes ever more. I think this would have been a ruthless competition anyway, but the fact that the cameras are rolling really bumped things up a notch.
Yeah, surprised a few times. Like really well set up shots that you believe.
Amy Adams and Brittany Murphy are in supporting roles as the other contestants, both who would become, big celebrities in their own right subsequent to this movie. So it's kind of interesting to see them doing what they can with smaller...
Which one was Amy Adams?
Amy Adams was sort of she came in second place. She was sort of the dumb but embracing it girl. The
sexy girl with the boyfriend?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was so good. They had some of the best moments, her and her boyfriend.
Yeah. And
then, just that click into sexiness that you're like, what? Wow.
And Brittany Murphy was sort of like the crazy, giggly
her
one.
A lot.
Yeah.
She always surprises me how much I like her.
Yeah, her output has gone downhill ever since she passed away, unfortunately.
Poor thing.
But I did think she was a decent actress. She was kind of that rare thing because she kind of looks like a cast for look type of actress.
Yeah.
But she did have some chops to her.
Oh, yeah, she filled those roles, like 8 Mile. Great. And this one is, another one where it's like a star quality, I think, or something. Yeah.
Anyway, we got all hung up on the cast here. What did you think of the movie?
Liked it. Surprised by it. Hadn't seen it before. And I don't know, arguably the most problematic of, the most imperfect of the movies, as well as arguably the most, quote, important movie, because there's something about and not to be all like feministy about it, but there's something about that girls' dynamic in the beauty pageant world, which is both an utter stereotype as well as a complete truth. And because of the context, this murder comedy, they can break all the rules, or most of them, and have a bunch of great female characters, have a bunch of like sideways commentaries about things. Like we have the outgoing pageant girl who's anorexic, who can't breathe, right? Like, and she's hideous.
And it's hilarious, but it should not
Exactly, and the movie is full of those sorts of moments where you're just like, that's brilliant, I don't know what else to do, I'm gonna laugh. Or,
you know what this movie has? It has balls.
It does. It's the biggest ovaries of the whole stack.
Well,
like, that's
ovaries,
the ovary
yes,
award.
Let's say it has ovaries.
The biggest balls, maybe. But who made it? Who made the movie?
There's
nads. That movie's got nads.
Like I said earlier in our conversation, that I have a real appetite for dark comedy. And there were lines in this movie where I was like, I said that might have been too far, you guys.
Nice.
And you know what? Good for them. That means like they're swinging for the fences. You know, you don't come away clean if you're playing hard for comedy.
Part of how they did it is they had such really great honest moments, like Kirstie Alley and Richardson have a moment where they smile at the camera and they're perfect pageant girls.
Yeah.
You're like, fuck, you girls are gorgeous, and you know how to like. It's like there's brilliant acting moments in it as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And some bad ones.
Well, like you say, I think they used the format well. The fact that it was a documentary really helped us get all the different angles on this.
The ending disappointed me.
Oh yeah, it's arguably anticlimactic.
Yeah.
I just want to bring up a couple of things that I personally thought I thought surprised me and like stretched my comfort level for comedy. And again, for me, that means you're working it. If you make me uncomfortable, well done. There's the kid. I don't know if they say if he's like autistic or what. He's that really heavy set guy.
I didn't like that.
Yeah, it seemed like this guy was retarded, for lack of a better word, and it was funny because he was retarded. And he was like a character.
Do you mean the brothers?
No, there's the one guy, he ran the store, and then I thought it was his son. Are they brothers?
Yeah.
His brother. Anyway, he obviously takes care of him.
That's the one you're talking about?
Yeah. There's lots of uncomfortable like humor involving him. Like when, for some reason, he's there while they're judging the girls, they have to keep stopping him from touching himself. And like all of this humor on him. And like, I did laugh a few times at it. I'm not going to say I didn't, but I questioned whether this was, this was not a safe laugh, and like this is weird that they would go there. There's also, they don't mention it a lot, but one of the contestants' parents are Asian, and they show up a little bit at the beginning.
Right.
But they have the super fun time, happy Asian stereotype family, America great, and it hits so hard that I'm like, that shouldn't be funny. It is funny, but
that one works. I think that one works because it's a white daughter.
Right.
It's this like adopted thing, so it's an extra bit of twist, and I'm okay with the stereotype there. I do have a note in my notes about a retard one, but I feel like the brothers one tied up easily, like tied up in a smart way. Sorry, you should keep talking because I have to look at something.
As I remember it, they said that in the end, when they sort of give you what happened to all the characters afterwards, his brother had died and he was left to run the store. And so he was just still himself, but somehow he was supposed to manage a business. The anticlimax of the movie, and this may or may not be a problem, is that we don't get a final showdown between our two girls. Denise Richards dies in one of the few, accidental deaths in the film.
Yeah.
Legitimately, accidentally is burned alive in front of her mother and the entire town. So Kirsten Dunst gets to go to the finals, but when she gets there, she finds out that this entire competition has all been for naught. The company that was running it has long since gone bankrupt, and for some reason, no one bothered to tell the good people of Minnesota.
And I suppose that it's really funny now that you mention it that feels anticlimactic, because it's only anticlimactic because we love Kirsten Dunst so much.
We want her to win.
We want her to win, despite the fact that all these girls have died. Like, That's hilarious that we forgive all of these deaths of these girls that we like or come to sort of like because Kristen Dunst won, and then, oh, too bad, she doesn't actually get to win.
Yeah. Were you surprised to find out who the killer was?
No.
Yeah.
I did doubt that for a while, though.
Yeah.
Like, I knew, and then there
Some
was
of the
good
classic,
misdirect.
it was the classic thing with thrillers. The movie clearly wanted us to think that Denise Richards was doing all of these murders. So I immediately took her off my list of suspects, which made it a short list. I mean, basically her mom, right?
Yeah.
Kirstie Alley, and I was correct.
Yeah.
But again, it was great seeing this turn because she's all about control, and keeping that face. And when she finally has that turn at the end of the movie, it is a genuinely really strong performance from Kirstie Alley. And I want to say same thing with Ellen Barkin. She spends a good portion.
Great.
She spends a good portion of the movie with a beer can fused to her hand because of an explosion in her trailer, which had clearly meant to kill her daughter.
Ash is into it.
Well, she's got it. She might as well ash into something, right? It's just a very, practical lady in a lot of ways. But again, a real person.
Yeah, they stole that movie, really, because they took it just seriously enough. And some of the others missed moments because they were either taking it too seriously or not seriously enough. And
but the main couples, I think, the rich snooty people and our trailer trash, we understood those two worlds, and I found myself valuing that I sort of find myself in between those two. I'm just like a suburban small town kid, right? So I feel like if those are the two extremes, it's nice to play in the middle of the fairway.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the context, is because we don't really need to know more about the world.
Yeah.
We can just have those two extremes and a bunch of interesting characters.
I was surprised at how much I liked this movie, especially when I revisited it. Watching it again, I was like, that is a really funny, really sharp, about something, dark comedy.
From the creators of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And Fargo.
Allow me to present myself formally. Goldthwaite Higginson Doa, Ph.D. I saw the sign in your window advertising a room to let.
I'm looking for a quiet tenant.
Madam, you are addressing a man who is quiet, and yet not quiet. Allow me to introduce you to my friends, these devoted and passionate musicians.
So y'all don't play no hippity-hop songs with the title spelled all funny.
Oh, no. We play church music. But I don't propose to inflict our rehearsals on you. Do you have a...
Okay, Ntara, you know that I am a ridiculously huge fan of the Coen brothers, and you're here on a very unique occasion. This is the first Coen Brothers movie that will be reviewed on Rank and Review. Yes.
What?
Yeah. Oh,
I
yes.
feel usually inside.
Yeah. my tummy just got all warm. It's interesting. This is a remake of The Lady Killer, which is a very famous film starring Alec Guinness. This version, or permutation of it, relocates it to New Orleans from London, I believe, and this stars Tom Hanks as a man who rents out the basement of a charming old lady under false pretenses. As far as she is concerned, he wants to rehearse with his band in her root cellar. But what he really is doing is digging a tunnel make a heist. The movie is called The Lady Killers, so of course she figures out what's going on, and it puts Tom Hanks and his bumbling group in the awkward position of having to rub her out. And this causes no end of problems. As I said, I'm a huge fan of the Coen brothers, but I'm going to drop a bomb. I think this might be my least favorite Coen brothers film. What did you think of The Lady Killers?
I liked it well enough.
Okay.
I'm not... I don't know that I would call myself a Coen Brothers fan. I like their work well enough. Some of it I think is absolutely brilliant, and I completely understand why people are crazy for them, and some of them I sort of go, and. So, this one I would say falls fairly squarely in the middle good.
Right.
for me. Mostly in your description, I want to see the original with Alec Guinness.
Right.
In the character, London makes more sense. Putting it in New Orleans adds a lot, and I think adds a lot that maybe is unnecessary to the basic storyline. Coens are lovely because they have these great... They put so much into a story. Like, it's squishy, full of goodness, right? And when it works really well, it's full of life and warmth and all of that. And I guess when it's more chaotic is when I'm not so sure I like it or not. And New Orleans is a really nice place for them to work because New Orleans itself is so full of detail and is really rich, and the slow warmth of New Orleans works really well for the way the Coen brothers tell a story. So that's all really nice. I was really aware of light in it. To be honest, the part of the story, even watching it the second time, going to watch it the second time, what I'd remembered about the story was the woman and the lady killers.
Right. Irma P. Hall plays the woman that they rent the house from.
Yeah, but I didn't actually remember the details of the gang. I just remembered her. I remembered Hanks, and I remembered there was some boys. I remembered and a basement business, and that was the meat of the story for me. So, and even again, I sort of had forgotten the whole. Oh, right. There's this repeated attempt to kill her, and they keep failing, and. And the whole story of her talking to her dead husband, like it becomes, the layers of it are really lovely. Yeah. Somehow it doesn't entirely gel, and I don't know why.
I like the movie. Again, this is one of my least favorite Coen Brothers movies, but I hold them to a fairly high esteem. I'm one of those guys when it comes to the Coen Brothers, and I'm honest about it. And I think it's taken as a general comedy that you'd go to see in the cinemas. This is a completely adequate exercise. You got Tom Hanks in the central performance, and he does a very solid job of it. He enjoys the dialogue that he's given.
And it's far more interesting comedy than most comedies, even.
It's just weird for me. I think that it's awkward when the Coen brothers try to be commercial. They're really good at just sort of making their Coen brothers movies, but every now and then they try to make something that's a hit, or in some cases they try to do both at once. The Hudsucker Proxy being a prime example of this. One of the first times they had a huge budget and a major studio backing them, they were making a movie to please everyone. This was to be their huge hit. Everybody who's seen the movie loves it, but nobody went to see it in the theaters. Oh. It was kind of a catastrophe in the money spent to money made kind of acquisition. For Paul Newman, Tim Robbins' big budget comedy, it did not do well. So then they just said, fine, we'll make our own movie, and they made Fargo, and it was one of the biggest hits of their career, arguably the most important hit of their career. I think at this point they'd done a couple of for-hire jobs. They did Intolerable Cruelty right before this, which was a script that they were originally hired to sort of doctor, and then some producer talked them into getting on board.
And that was the Teenagers' Dangerous Liaison?
No. This was George Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Sorry.
Intolerable Cruelty. Yeah,
loved it. Good. Goodness.
Divorce lawyers. It's a good time.
Sorry,
it's a
similar title.
Fun movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, loved it.
But they had a couple of things on the docket that they wanted to get to make. No Country for Old Men, and some of their more personal projects. And I think I get the feeling, I didn't talk to them about it, but they thought Tom Hanks, remake of The Lady Killers, mega hit, mega box office, we'll get ourselves a solid notch.
Fair enough.
It may not be one of our Oscar ones, but we can make another little Raising Arizona. And I wish they had made a Raising Arizona. Right? But some of the comedy that's a little bit broad, one of the characters has a problem with his intestines, irritable bowel syndrome. They set it up in a classic Coen Brothers way, but they go to the well a lot, and I don't think it's funny. It almost feels like pandering. There's a few scenes like this where Marlon Wayans is talking about this woman's ass at work, which just seem doesn't sound Coen Brothers to me. It sort of sounds like this is what they think the mainstream audience are expecting from a mainstream comedy. It's funny enough, and it works well enough. And I don't want to talk all about the Coen Brothers and not about this movie, so I'll get more into the actual plot.
But before we move on, I think that's an awesome description for why the film doesn't quite work. Because it almost works, but there's those weird things. It's like, what the hell? That's not even, like, weird enough.
But
you know?
does it stick out more for me because I'm a Coen Brothers freak, and if I didn't have all the baggage with the Coen Brothers that I do, and just watch this movie as a comedy, would they bother me as much? I don't know.
No, but I think that we both agree on film to an extent that your solutions for it, like the things that you can see as being wrong with it, are probably the same sort of things that don't ring true for me.
Right.
Because the Coen Brothers and the concept, so much of this should work.
Yeah.
So much of the broadness should still work. Like, I shouldn't be sitting there going, okay, Tom Hanks, why doesn't this fit exactly? Right. This could have been another Oh Brother, Where Art Thou type event, right?
Well,
like, just weird enough, but, just exciting enough, but not too weird. You can sort of, you can get in and you're sort of safe and it's interesting.
The stuff with Irma P. Hall and her loving the church and her trips to the church.
Yeah.
All sort of gave me that Oh Brother vibe where you really felt a sense of place of who this woman was.
Yeah.
You loved her. You
just
and that's
loved
the
her, fascinating stuff
and
of
they're
their
so good
work.
at doing that.
Yeah.
But it's not the same movie as when she gets back to the house and these guys are trying to kill them in this Wile E. Coyote way. That said, once the movie gets to that point where it's basically a series of attempted and failed hits on this old lady, that's when it really kicks into high gear and becomes a lot of fun. I think that the middle of the movie is a little bit slow for me, even. I will say that. But yeah, the setup I love. It doesn't
know what it is in the middle.
Yeah, the setup I love, and once they've established the botched heist happens, and they've established that they have to kill this woman. I think the turning point scene for the movie is the drawing straws sequence. When they decide who's the person that's going to have to ice the old lady. Nobody wants to do it, but it's got to get done.
And it's real enough at that point that you buy in, and you're oh my god, could I do that? Could that person do that? And that's the brilliance of the story in that time period, because murder means something different, and that's why it's a great movie to see, a great movie to be made. Because the idea of murder is real. It's not just a toss-off. Yeah, for sure, I'd kill somebody for $1 million. Like it actually is painful that these guys, you actually understand why it's so hard to kill this woman, as opposed to sitting there going, just stick the pillow over her face.
Yeah, well, Tom Hanks doesn't want to kill this woman at all.
And
in fact, I believe that he would be the last of the men capable of it. It's a great little crew that he has got together here. J.K. Simmons is an actor I really like. It's Juno's dad from the movie Juno, and he was in the TV show Oz and a few other things. C. May, who I'm not as familiar with, Ryan Hurst, who plays this just dumb as a bag of hammers.
Was very, very nice. He was solid. He played his stereotype as well as giving it super flesh, which is always solid.
Ryan Hurst is a football guy, and he is hilarious. You wouldn't recognize him, but a lot of people will know him from Sons of Anarchy. He's actually was in the TV show Sons of Anarchy. He's one of the guys in the gang.
Huh.
And of course, Marlon Wayans shows up in here as one of the guys in the sort of a bit of a problem starter for the group, but a fairly high energy performance.
Charming.
Yeah. So, all the pieces are here. You see that this is a good movie. The script is solid. It's the Coen Brothers. I don't really think that they're going to make a bad movie, and I don't think that this is a bad movie. I think on the world of the Coen Brothers, I would rank this low. You will enjoy, especially once we get to the antics of trying to kill this old lady. And that's the point where all of a sudden, deaths do start to come for laughs. But there's just some bizarre, spectacular sequences that you could not possibly predict that are just brilliantly, darkly funny. And, there's a lot of laughs to be had.
And they're well framed and a lot of beautiful shots. Like the Coen brothers do what they do well.
There's a
beautiful
reason they're
sense
so
of
respected.
place.
Yeah.
You know, the cinematography is beautiful. The important important heart notes are hit, and you buy in, and you just wish something.
I always say I'm hardest
less,
on the ones that I love. It sounds like I'm giving this a negative review, and I'm not. It's a funny movie. I just love me those Cobras.
Well, yeah, and it's the sort of issues that the reason that I don't like their films is maybe why I don't like this one either. Like.
So it was that we came to the rank and review part of this rank and review, of this very special rank and review episode, where this is the first episode where we haven't just concentrated on horror movies, so it's a little different. I'm a little out of my typical element here.
Well, we could talk about what's so horrific about these movies. Would that make you feel better?
Well, I think they all had an element. Like you said, the descriptor of each of those movies, you could cheat it into a
Well, yeah, and I have been feeling bitchy, so I could rip them apart. It would be terrible.
Yes. Well, I'm fascinated to know, what was your least favorite of these movies and why?
Well, I have to admit that Throw Momma from the Train was my least favorite. Wow. Okay. For all that I loved about it, I simply enjoyed it the least. Like, the funny moments were more awkward feeling for me rather than up and up hilarious. The really lovely, sort of well-crafted moments, like the sequence with with Danny DeVito calling from Hawaii and all of the ridiculous phone booths. Right. You know, those sequences were just absurd enough to not really be funny, like to be lovely, right. but not like ha 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 hilarious. And the horror part of it, I bought into, and the dark comedy of it, and the Hitchcock edge of it, and yet somehow it didn't sustain me through the end scene, which is kind of a fail. I mean, maybe it's a fail on me of not buying in well enough, but if there's the possibility in this kind of setup for me to not realize in that last scene that we're in the homage moment on the train where it all began, something's a little bit not good enough. So, too bad, Danny DeVito, I love you. Momma, I love you. I do have a new respect for this film, and I would gladly watch it again. So I'm super glad.
And like to say, you got to put one at the bottom. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie. It's just your least favorite of this group. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right.
Totally
what's
good movie.
Number 5?
Number 5 is The Lady Killers, which, is another. It's one of those. Gee, those Coen brothers make good movies. I'd like to go watch a different one of theirs to remind me of how good this one could be. Because it could be, but gosh, Tom Hanks kind of sucked in it. Yeah, as awesome as he was, it just got too self-conscious sometimes.
I got a kick out of him.
Yeah, it was great. But that's sort of the example of it. It was totally great. And okay, enough of that. So, too bad for that. It was the prettiest one though. Like when I think about it, my head is just all full of the green of it. So I'd watch it again just for that.
So number 4 is
The Cable Guy.
Cable Guy.
Definitely the one that leaves me feeling the most disturbed and kind of tied up in my chest.
Oh yes.
I'm still not sure I want to watch it again as much as I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it.
Surprisingly high placement, and some people would argue, again, like I said, this was not very well received critically or financially. It's one of the early Judd Apatow productions, too. He's now come up quite a ways in the where he's so big in comedy now, his movies don't even need to be funny.
Wow. That's ridiculous. Arguably, this is not funny. I'd have to review my notes to see how much I laughed at it. And yeah, I'm surprised at where it sits, to be sure. and like really, when you're looking at who's involved in Cable Guy versus Lady Killers and Throw Momma from the Train, it's a no-brainer that Cable Guy would not even be on that list.
Right.
However, I was so pleasantly surprised by Jim Carrey's work in it, and the social commentary that came up in it.
It was about something.
Yeah, and even if I didn't know that's what it was about until the end, the Jim Carrey character sustained me because it was interesting enough and heartwarming enough. Would I have felt that way if I was just watching it on TV randomly? Who knows? Who knows? But
all right. Well, what scratched its way to number 3 then?
I'm so judgy. Drop Dead Gorgeous is number 3, which surprises me as well. For all that I liked it, there was a lot of issues I had with it.
Right.
Like, Dunst at one moment, she has a panic moment that's just this, like, are you serious? Like, how does that pass as acting?
Oh, no.
Like, come on, girl. And there's a couple of those moments that you just kind of forgive, and I'll just forgive that moment, which might be because it's sort of a girly movie and I wanted it to be better than it was, but the good is good, and I'll stand by it.
All right, number 2.
Number 2, So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Wow.
Yeah, and all of these placements I'm finding are surprising to me, but I will stand by this. So
it is what it is. It's very successful at doing what it does.
Oh yeah, and I think, and I have to rate it. I have to rate it highly because I keep being surprised at how good it is. Every time I see it again, I get caught up in it, and it rarely happens for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I bet you I know what your number 1 is then.
Duh, big surprise. Well, actually, it was a surprise. Heather's is my number 1 pick on that list. And I don't know, I feel like I'm being really bitchy because I'm all like, they're also problematic. These movies are imperfect.
Well, when you're forced into a position of ranking movies, and I understand this is very arbitrary, they're all good movies. It's just interesting to see. It's like, if I ask you how you feel about one movie, I get your perception of one. But if I see a rank of 6, I feel like I get a little bit of an idea of your taste in movies. Our lists are pretty different.
I just want to... Okay, go.
You want to go? Yeah.
No, go. You go.
But they're not so different as to be like, no fights are going to break out, you know. I don't think that this is going to cause a rift in our friendship.
I'm guessing a couple of them.
I don't think it's going to cause a rift in our friendship, but yeah, it's in a different order.
Okay, while you're doing that, I just have to say that I'm still surprised that Heather's is the top of the list because it's not like a feel-good movie. It's not I'm just going to sit down and watch a movie.
Just throw something in for fun.
Right? Like, I've probably seen Axe Murderer more, but it's just a more interesting movie. Like, if I was going to keep one of all of those 6 that was not to be burned in the great burning of things.
Oh, yeah. If I had to pick one of these for a desert island, Heather's is there, for sure, over all the rest of them. It would hurt me to turn my back on the Cobras, but there it is.
But would you? Anyway.
Well, if the desert island didn't have a DVD player, I'd be screwed anyway.
Where's the desert island?
I gave Cable Guy the number 6 position, and it's not because I don't like the Cable Guy.
You hate my boyfriend, Jim Carrey. Barf.
I think it's a gutsy dark comedy, and I think that especially at that time in his career, it was, you know, I bet you he really relished playing a role of someone so sinister, you know. I had a good time with it. I thought the satire again was almost ahead of its time. Solid movie, doesn't deserve the negative reputation, but something had to be 6, and so there's the Cable Guy. And believe it or not, at number 5, and this might piss you off, I put your number 2, So I Married an Axe Murderer, again, which I completely enjoy. Like I say, it is what it is. It does what it does well. It's a romantic comedy. It hits those notes well. It's got the thriller backstory, and it hits those notes well. It gives Mike Myers, you know, soft pitches so that he can do the things that he does well. It goes down easy. You can watch it again and again. But it didn't change my perceptions of the world. It's just like it was a totally decent comedy. So there it is. So number 4 will be Where the Lady Killers lands up. It's really well made, and there's great script stuff. I just think that there's like they're serving different moods at different times. The movie doesn't have one consistent mood the way a lot of the other Coen Brothers sort of settle into one nice groove. And once you get on their wavelength, you can just ride the movie out. The wavelength has a lot of little bumps and hits in it, but it is funny. It's well acted. It's amazingly well executed. It's dark, and quite violent, actually, in the second half. Certainly worthy of this list. Homicide made hilarious. But, yeah, for a Coen Brothers movie not to make the top 3 surprises me. Number 3 is Throw Momma from the Train. Interesting to note about Throw Momma from the Train, the main character's name is Larry, and my name is Larry, and Danny DeVito's character's name is Owen, and my son's name is Owen, so I have 2 namesakes in this movie. It's not that I love the movie that much that I chose to name my son after a character in it, but it's interesting to me. I don't know, I totally love the Danny DeVito character in it. I think that that's the thing about this movie, that why it ranks so high to me, is like, it's so interesting that we have this character who is willing to commit murder, but who I like so much. Because as far as he knows, he did kill somebody, and he doesn't even seem like eating up inside racked with guilt about it. It was like the thing he had to do to get, his mom out of his life so that he could be sane. It's interesting that it's a complex character, and that's really well played by Danny DeVito. And on top of doing that role, he was also directing the movie. I was quite impressed with it. And like I say, it's quick, easy to digest, fun comedy. I say, go team on Throw Momma from the Train. Surprising me, you said you were surprised by your number 2. I was very surprised by my number 2, but there's Drop Dead Gorgeous at number 2. It is very, very dark and gutsy. Like I say, this is, out of all these dark comedies, this movie has the most uncomfortable humor to it, and it is about something. Like you were saying, the previous contestant, or the previous winner of the contest that they keep interviewing, who's like losing her hair and her teeth and can barely speak, and I laughed, and I knew that I should not be cool with laughing at that that's a very real thing that happens to people, but damn. Heathers is the best of these 6 movies. I think, like I say, it's close to bona fide classic. If you haven't seen Heathers, do yourself a favor. It's aged remarkably well. It does feel very 80s. Some of the fashions are off, some of the music are off, but it's all within the world of the movie. There's just something about it that I think ages well. Some people are off-put by how Jack Nicholson, Christian Slater, is. He has subsequently admitted that he'd recently seen The Witches of Eastwick and was very impressed by Jack Nicholson, and that maybe that might have influenced his role. Well, you know what? If you're going to steal, brother, steal from the best. So be it. And it utterly works. But, yeah. Heather's number 1. Thank you so much for ranking and reviewing with me, Ntara. Is there anything you want me to promote or to give people direction to you on the interwebs? No? Ntara is a very talented actress and dancer in Saskatoon and Manitoba and Canada in general. Good people. And there it was. Episode 10 of Rank and Review is behind us. Hope you guys liked that change of pace. It was a different episode for me. I was so used to talking about horror movies that I felt almost out of my element. If you'd like to write me and let me know how I did, please do so at rankandreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW@gmail.com. And we have a fan page on Facebook for Rank and Review, so if you'd like to join up that, leave a post, that would be great to hear from you. My name is Larry Parsons. I'm your host and random Canadian, and thank you so much for listening.